The notification popped up just as I held my achievement certificate, the gold foil, catching the bright lights of the rehabilitation center. I was 68, a widow, and I had just spent 8 grueling months teaching my mouth how to form clear words again after a stroke. My therapist, Sarah, handed me the framed paper with a warm grin. I traced my name, Quinn Harris, feeling a quiet sense of pride. Then my phone buzzed on the table. Muscle memory made me tap the screen. It was an Instagram post from my daughter, Clara. A carousel of photos loaded, showing white sand turquoise water and a sprawling luxury beach resort. Clara posed in a designer swimsuit beside her husband Mark and Mark's parents. They held tropical drinks laughing under a private cabana. The caption sat right at the bottom: annual family getaway. Beach resort. Only perfect people here. No heavy energy, just good vibes. I stared at her post, then smiled quietly. Clara had told me they were going camping upstate. She claimed she didn't want to bother me with the noise of her kids while I was recovering. But looking at the location tag, the Azure Sun Resort, the truth was glaringly obvious. My stroke had left me with a slight speech hesitation. I wasn't perfect enough for Mark's wealthy, image-obsessed parents. I was an embarrassment they preferred to leave behind. My chest tightened, but I didn't shed a tear. Tears were a waste of hydration. I zoomed in on the cabana number in the background of the third photo. Cabana 4. Premium Oceanfront. I recognized it immediately because the Azure Sun Resort was part of the exclusive vacation club my late husband and I had bought into decades ago. Clara didn't pay for this trip. She had simply logged into my account. Now, her perfect vacation needs a reality check. Clara and Mark had moved into my 4-bedroom house 2 years ago. They claimed they wanted to help me manage the property after my husband passed, but their real motivation was rent-free living while they saved for a down payment. Over time, they slowly took over. My vintage armchair was replaced by their modern, uncomfortable sofa. My gardening tools were shoved aside for Mark's golf clubs. When I had my stroke, I became a ghost in my own home. Clara treated my recovery like a minor inconvenience to her social calendar. I walked through my front door, the silence of the empty house greeting me. Usually the living room was scattered with their children's toys and Mark's discarded shoes. Today, it was impeccably clean. Clara had clearly hired a maid service before leaving, wanting the house pristine for their return. I placed my speech therapy certificate on the mantelpiece right in the center. Walking down the hallway, I stopped at the master bedroom. They had claimed it a year ago, moving me into the smaller guest room near the laundry area, because Mark needed the larger closet. I pushed the door open. Clara's expensive clothes hung neatly. Her luxury skincare lined my vanity. They were living the life of high society elites, all funded by the absence of rent and the quiet utilization of my accounts. I walked to the kitchen and pulled a stack of heavy-duty garbage bags from the pantry. I didn't feel angry, just incredibly focused. Clara had drawn a boundary today. She wanted a life of perfection, separate from my heavy energy. I completely agreed with her. It was time to separate our lives. I picked up my phone and opened the Vacation Club app. The application loaded quickly, displaying my Platinum Elite status at the top of the screen. I navigated to the current reservations tab. There it was, a 7-night stay in a premium ocean view suite, plus daily cabana rentals, all booked under guest Clara Vance. Since the membership was solely in my name, Clara relied on my guest privileges to access the resort. More importantly, she relied on the default credit card I had on file to cover the incidentals and the daily resort fees. A text message popped up at the top of my screen. It was from Clara. "Hey, Mom. Hope your therapy went well today. Cell service is spotty up here in the woods. Kids say hi. Rest up." I read the lie twice. She was sipping cocktails by a pool, pretending to rough it in a tent. I didn't type a long emotional paragraph. I didn't ask her why she lied. I simply replied, "Therapy was excellent. Enjoy your trip." I switched back to the resort app. I tapped on the active reservation. A menu popped up with several options. I selected Manage Guest Access. The screen asked if I wanted to revoke guest privileges for Clara Vance. I tapped Yes. Next, I went to the billing section and deleted my primary credit card from the incidental folio. A red warning banner appeared. Action required. Guest must provide a valid payment method at the front desk immediately to maintain room access. I tapped Confirm. The screen refreshed. Clara's perfect getaway was now entirely in her own hands. With the digital cord cut, I turned my attention to the physical ones. I grabbed the heavy-duty bags and walked straight into the master bedroom. I didn't destroy anything. I was simply relocating. I packed Clara's designer dresses, Mark's tailored suits, and their endless pairs of shoes. I dragged the bags down the hall and piled them neatly inside the attached garage. Next came the furniture. I couldn't move the heavy bed frame myself, so I walked next door and offered the neighbors 2 teenage boys $50 each. They happily hauled Clara's oversized mattress and vanity out to the garage. Within 2 hours, the master bedroom was empty. I moved my own cozy, familiar bed back into the room where I had slept for 30 years. I hung my clothes in the spacious closet. I breathed in the scent of my own space, feeling lighter than I had in months. The final step was the front door. Mark had installed a smart lock last year so he wouldn't have to carry a key. I opened the security app on my phone, deleted their individual access codes, and created a new complex passcode known only to me. The house was secure. My sanctuary was mine again. Just as I sat down in the living room with a fresh cup of tea, my phone began to vibrate violently on the coffee table. The caller ID flashed Clara's name, accompanied by a picture of her smiling perfectly. The resort front desk must have finally locked them out of their suite. I took a slow sip of my tea, letting it ring. The phone stopped ringing only to start again 10 seconds later. I picked it up, swiping the green button. "Mom, what did you do?" Clara shrieked. The background noise was chaotic, people talking, lounge music playing. "Hello, Clara," I replied, my voice steady, utilizing the pacing techniques I learned in therapy. "Don't hello Clara me. We just went to order lunch at the Cabana and they told us our account was frozen. Then the manager came out and said your credit card was removed and my guest pass was revoked. Do you know how embarrassing this is? Mark's parents are standing right here. I saw your photo," I stated calmly. "The one at the beach resort, not the woods." Silence stretched on the line. I heard Mark cursing softly in the background. Clara scrambled for an excuse. "Mom, listen, it was a last-minute change. Mark's parents invited us and we didn't want to make you feel bad because of your condition. You wouldn't enjoy this crowd." "I understand," I answered. "You wanted only perfect people, I agree. Perfect people should be perfectly capable of paying for their own vacations. The front desk needs your card, Clara." "Mom, we can't. The balance is already $4,000 with the Cabana and the spa. We don't have that on our debit cards. You have to put your card back on file right now." "I cannot do that," I replied, feeling no guilt whatsoever. Enjoy the good vibes. I ended the call and switched my phone to Do Not Disturb. That evening, I drove myself to my favorite Italian restaurant downtown. I had invited Sarah, my speech therapist, to celebrate my graduation from the program. I wore a crimson blouse that Clara always hated, claiming it was too bright for my age. I felt radiant. Sarah raised her glass of sparkling water across the booth. To Quinn, "You worked harder than anyone in the clinic. Your speech is remarkably clear." "Thank you." I smiled, lifting my own glass. I finally found my voice again. In more ways than one. I briefly explained the situation with Clara. Sarah listened, her eyes widening slightly, but she nodded in understanding. I didn't frame myself as a victim, nor did I seek pity. I simply stated the facts of how I was reclaiming my independence. I ordered the lobster ravioli and enjoyed every single bite. When I checked my phone after dinner, I had 14 missed calls and 26 text messages. Mark had stepped in texting, "Quinn, this is incredibly immature. You are stranding your grandchildren. Put the card back now, or we are leaving." I didn't bother responding to Mark. He was a grown man who drove a luxury car but couldn't afford his own hotel bill. I scrolled past his threats and found a message from Clara. "They are making us pack up. Mark's parents had to pay the balance, and they are furious. We are driving home tonight. We need to have a serious talk about boundaries." I chuckled softly in the quiet car. We certainly did. The next morning, I woke up in my own master bedroom for the first time in 2 years. The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains, warming the hardwood floor. I stretched my arms above my head, taking a deep breath of the quiet air. There were no heavy footsteps stomping down the hallway, no loud television blaring from the living room, and no passive-aggressive sighs from Clara, complaining about the lack of organic almond milk. I felt a profound, grounding sense of peace. I walked to the kitchen and took my time brewing a strong pot of French roast coffee. I was just sitting down at the island with a fresh cup and a slice of toast when my phone chimed. It was an automated push notification from my banking app. Transaction declined $125 at Highway 95 Gas and Diner. 30 seconds later, another alert popped up. Transaction declined $80 at Highway 95 Gas and Diner. I took a slow sip of my coffee and smiled. Before my stroke, I had given Clara a joint credit card specifically for household emergencies, a broken water heater, a flat tire, things of that nature. But when they took over the house, the definition of an emergency shifted. She started using it for premium groceries, then expensive dinners out, and eventually her own personal shopping hauls. Yesterday afternoon, while the neighbors' boys were hauling Clara's vanity to the garage, I had logged into my banking portal. I didn't cancel the card entirely, as I knew that would trigger an automatic fraud alert and unnecessary phone calls. Instead, I simply navigated to the card controls and lowered the credit limit to a grand total of $50. A minute later, my phone buzzed with an incoming text from Clara. "Mom, why is the emergency card declining? We need gas." Mark's parents were furious and drove home on a different route. Now we are stranded at a gas station 2 hours away from the city. I set my mug down and typed back carefully, ensuring my spelling was perfect and my tone was entirely neutral. "The card is for household emergencies. Funding a road trip back from a secret luxury vacation is not a household emergency. Use your own debit card." The typing bubble appeared and disappeared rapidly before her reply came through. "We maxed out our daily withdrawal limits, paying the resort fees yesterday because you abandoned us. The front desk wouldn't let us leave until we settled the cabana and spa bill. Unblock the card right now." Then a text from Mark's number came through. "Quinn, this is Mark. Stop playing these petty games. We have your grandchildren in the car and they are hungry. Turn the card back on immediately or you'll regret it." They were trying to use my grandchildren as leverage. In the past, that might have worked. But the old Quinn was gone. I knew for a fact that they both had perfectly functional credit cards in their wallets. They just didn't want to carry the debt on their own accounts. "You both have full-time jobs," I replied to the group chat. "Figure it out." I put the phone on silent, flipped it face down on the granite counter, and went back to my breakfast. They would find a way home. They always did when they had no other choice. It was nearly 3 in the afternoon when I heard the aggressive roar of an engine. I was sitting by the front window quietly reading a novel. I looked up to see Mark's SUV pull recklessly into the driveway, tires screeching slightly against the pavement. He threw the car into park, killed the engine, and slammed his door so hard the windows rattled. Clara stormed up the front walkway right behind him, looking entirely exhausted and disheveled. The designer swimsuit vibes from her perfect Instagram post were completely gone, replaced by a wrinkled linen shirt and an expression of pure entitlement. Mark marched directly up to the front door and confidently punched his 4-digit code into the smart lock keypad. The device emitted a sharp beep and flashed an angry red circle. He frowned, muttered something under his breath, and tried again, pressing the buttons much harder this time. Red again. Clara pushed past his shoulder, rolling her eyes. "You're doing it wrong. Let me do it," she snapped, typing in her own code. When the lock flashed red for a third time, she let out a frustrated groan and pounded her fist against the heavy wooden door. "Mom, open this door. The stupid smart lock is glitching again," she yelled. I took a deep breath, practicing the pacing and throat-clearing techniques I had learned in speech therapy. I wanted my voice to be as steady and unbothered as my heartbeat. I stood up, smoothed out my trousers, and walked unhurriedly into the foyer. I turned the deadbolt and pulled open the solid inner wooden door, but I left the heavy metal security screen firmly locked between us. Clara glared at me through the black mesh, her hands on her hips. "Finally," she huffed, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Open the screen. We've been driving for 6 hours in traffic, the kids are complaining, and I am absolutely exhausted. You have a lot of explaining to do about that credit card stunt." I stood perfectly still, looking at her, and then shifted my gaze to Mark, who was clutching a heavy luxury overnight bag, looking ready to barge in and drop his luggage on my clean floors. "I don't owe you any explanations, Clara," I said calmly, "but you are standing at the wrong door." "What are you talking about?" Mark demanded, stepping closer to the screen. His face was sunburned and his patience was clearly gone. "Open the damn door, Quinn. We live here. Stop playing these ridiculous games." "You lived here," I corrected smoothly. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan, pulled out a standard dull brass key, and slipped it horizontally through the mail slot on the screen door. It clattered loudly onto the welcome mat at their feet. That is the side door to the garage. Clara stared down at the key, then back up at me, her mouth hanging slightly open in confusion. "The garage? Why on earth do we need the garage key?" "Because that is where your belongings are." I stated my voice, never rising. "Your bed, your clothes, your skincare, Mark's golf clubs. Everything you own is neatly packed in the garage. There is a utility sink and a half bathroom out there you can use." Mark's face flushed a deep, furious crimson. "Are you out of your mind? You can't just throw us in the garage like animals. This is our house too." "I own this house," I replied, maintaining unwavering eye contact. "My name is on the deed. You lived here as my guests to save money, but you made it very clear on your public post that my presence brings down your energy. I am simply creating a physical boundary so my energy will no longer bother your perfect life." Clara stared at the key on the mat, then back at me. "The garage. Why do we need the garage key?" "Because that is where your belongings are," I stated clearly. "Your bed, your clothes, your shoes. Everything you own is neatly packed in the garage. There is a bathroom out there you can use." Mark's face flushed a deep, angry crimson. "Are you insane? We live here. You can't just throw us in the garage. I own this house," I replied, maintaining eye contact. "You lived here as my guests, but you made it very clear on your public post that my presence brings down your energy. I am simply creating an environment where my energy will no longer bother you." "Mom, you can't do this," Clara yelled, dropping the victim act. Where are we supposed to sleep? You can set up your bed in the garage for now, I instructed. You have 30 days to find a new apartment and move your things out completely. That is a standard notice. We are family, Clara screamed, her voice echoing in the quiet neighborhood. You are supposed to help us. I helped you for 2 years. I answered my voice, never rising. You repaid me by erasing me from your life when I wasn't perfect enough for your pictures. Now you can build your perfect life somewhere else. I stepped back and firmly closed the heavy wooden door, locking the deadbolt with a satisfying click. They spent 3 miserable nights in the garage. Mark tried to argue his way into the main house every morning, but I simply ignored him. I kept the doors locked and went about my day. By the 4th day, they hired a cheap moving truck. Without access to my credit cards, they had to borrow money from Mark's parents to afford the deposit on a cramped 2-bedroom apartment across town. Clara didn't say goodbye when they drove away. I didn't expect her to. A month passed. The house was entirely mine again. The scent of Clara's heavy perfumes faded, replaced by the smell of lemon polish and fresh flowers from my garden. I resumed my morning routines without navigating around Mark's clutter. My speech continued to improve, my confidence growing with every clear sentence I spoke. One afternoon, I sat on my patio with a glass of iced tea, scrolling through my phone. I opened the Vacation Club app. My account was in excellent standing, and I had plenty of points saved up from the years Clara had hijacked my benefits. I selected the Azure Sun Resort. I picked Cabana 4, the premium oceanfront spot. But this time, I wasn't booking it for an ungrateful daughter. I added Sarah and 2 of my closest friends from the neighborhood to the guest list. I tapped Confirm Reservation. I leaned back in my chair, listening to the quiet rustle of the wind in the trees. Life wasn't perfect, but it was finally mine.